What's up, everyone? Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Paris and I make videos all about candle making and the starting and managing of my small candle business, Lady Simone Candle Co. And in today's video, I am going to give you some candle making tips and tricks for beginners. Whether you're starting this as a hobby or you're thinking about starting a small candle business at home, I have some tips and tricks up my sleeve that I think will help. You know, I got my laptop here, my talking notes, so let's get started. First, we're gonna start with wax. There is a variety of waxes out there, so naturally, because I was one of them, you can feel slightly overwhelmed with, okay, what wax do I choose? Where do I even start? What kind of properties do they have? You know, what is all this about? So as you get to know me on this channel, I love doing research. So it hit me while I was thinking about what ideas to do for my channel, like how many waxes are really out there? So, you know, I had to look it up. There is about 60 to 70 different waxes and wax blends out there for us candle makers. That's a lot. Like, that's a lot to even be like, where do I start? 60 to 70 different waxes? How can there be that many? But there is that many. I was actually shocked. I didn't even know that. So they all have their different type of properties and advantages. All candle makers use different waxes for different reasons. So I thought I would, at least for the sake of this video, break down the 3 different waxes that are popular amongst us candle makers and give the information to you for you to then take and do your own research and figure out what works for you. So the first one is beeswax, which is a byproduct of the bees making honey, and it has kind of like a nice golden hue color to it. I don't know if you've ever seen beeswax, but that's kind of how it looks, very similar to like a lighter color of what honey is. And it also has like a subtle sweet scent to it. So the one thing to know about beeswax is if you're adding fragrance to it, sometimes it can kind of compromise what the cold and hot throw may be once it's a final product, because it already kind of has a subtle sweet smell. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Another thing to keep in mind is with beeswax, it's mainly good to use when you want to make things like pillar candles, kind of those tall candles, or candles that you kind of want to texturize or mold into different shapes. The reason why is because when they harden, they are really, really rock solid. Even though candles and, you know, wax melts tend to kind of harden anyway, beeswax hardens even more so. So it's great for holding shape and textures. So a lot of us candle makers will turn to beeswax for that purpose. When it comes to the cold and hot throw, it's not that great. Again, mainly because it's used for, you know, making different type of shapes and textures and designs with it. So it's not really, really great with the scent, but us candle makers like it for that purpose. The second wax is Soywax, which is by far my favorite, and it's actually the wax that I offer currently in my line with my candles and wax melts. One of the reasons why it's mainly popular is because it's all natural. Nowadays, most of us are gearing towards natural foods, natural body products, natural skincare, natural hair care, anything that we can get as natural as possible. Nowadays, we're gravitating to it. So Soywax is an all-natural soy wax grown from soybeans, and it's great for container candles and wax melts. So a lot of us gear toward that for that purpose. I know for me, when I was breaking down the different waxes and trying to figure out what wax I wanted to offer, when I became serious when starting a business, I knew I wanted to go the natural route. Number one, even for my own home, I try to gear towards the soy wax mainly because it does not contain the toxic wax fumes. It's not released into the air. And then the soot and kind of that black flickering soot that kind of flickers around sometimes is very minimal. So for all of those reasons, I kind of gear towards the soy wax. One thing to note though, it can be a little tricky to work with. Soywax can act kind of funny sometimes. So it's definitely a wax that you want to kind of play around with and practice with should you, think about getting serious about making candles. But again, it's popular amongst customers. I knew I wanted my end user to be happy, and I knew to appeal to the broadest of customers, Soywax would kind of be the go. But by all means, it's not a right or wrong wax. It's just, again, came down to my preference. The last wax that I kind of just wanted to touch on, which is another popular wax amongst us candle makers and customers, is the paraffin wax or the paraffin blend waxes. Paraffin is popular hands down because it has an amazing cold and hot throw. The scent released from those candles and wax melts is phenomenal. So a lot of people gear towards the paraffin wax for that reason. They want a strong smelling candle. And I think I failed to mention, but with Soywax, the scent is there, hot or cold throw, but it can be subtle depending on the fragrance you use and the fragrance load percentage that you use, which I can break down in another video. But for the sake of this video, when it comes to the hot and cold scent throw, paraffin wax by far takes the gold. So as a tip, I just recommend, hands down, just doing your research. Look up, Google, see what's out there. There's, again, 60 to 70 different waxes. I don't recommend looking up all of them, but I just recommend just maybe playing with some different beginner candle making kits that have different waxes and seeing what you like. It all comes down to just trial and error. There's no right or wrong wax, guys. We all love it, right? If you're a candle and scent lover, you all love it. So number 2, let's talk about choosing your scent, candle shape, and size. So when it comes to shapes and sizes, look, there is a ton. Okay, just like waxes, there's a ton of candle jar shapes, candle mold shapes, and it comes in all different sizes. But when it comes to beginners, I always like to recommend, when I get questions, where should I start? Start with a container, a glass container candle jar. I would start at the basic level, getting a container jar. Why? Because it's the easiest to work with, and it's just a matter of pouring your wax into the jar and it hardens. It cures, that's it. When it comes to the different size jars, and not size, but like the different shape jars and different shape molds and things like that, that's when it can become a bit tricky, and you can kind of play around with it as you get into candle making. But if you want to just learn to make a candle, start with just a regular container jar. It's the simplest and easiest way to go. When it comes to choosing your fragrance though, I mean, we all know there's thousands of fragrances out there. That is something that also comes down to just preference, right? Get on Google, get on some candle supplier sites and just look up some fragrances. See what sticks out at you. If you have a local candle supplier store, go visit it, smell some fragrances, see what pops out at you. I know for me, with my line, I'm all about empowerment. So when I was recovering from my postpartum anxiety, I would go visit my local candle supplier store, and I would really just gravitate to the scents that made me feel good. Bottom line, I adore candles. I adore scents. So when I go even smell other scents like Yankee or Bath and Body Works, I buy what sticks out to me, right? Even you as a customer, candle makers are customers too, right? You buy what sticks out at you. So the same thing for fragrance. When it comes to candle size, I always recommend, again, to beginners, start small, 4 ounce, 8 ounce candle jars, or even the tins. Actually, I started out with the tins. 4 to 8 ounces work, or even 6 ounces. I would start there and get a feel for wicking the jars and melting the wax and pouring the wax and getting the wick centered and playing around with all of that, learning how to clip the trim the wick and all of that stuff. Start small and then kind of work your way up to the bigger, more awkward size jars and play around with it. Number 3, which is actually the trickiest of them all, is selecting a wick. This is time consuming, mainly because, y'all, there's a lot of wicks out there and they all serve a different purpose. And I say that because depending on your candle jar size, okay, depending on the wax you use, depending on the fragrance load percentage that you use, it all works together to make a good candle, right? So if your wick doesn't work with the other three that I just named, your candle's not going to perform. Bottom line. So what I recommend, here's the tip: contact your candle supplier that you either got your candle making kit from, or you know, just a candle supplier that is either local or online, and ask what they recommend. I know for me, when I first started, I ordered a candle making kit from Candle Science. Oops, shout out to Candle Science. And they sent me my candle making kit, and guess what? Everything that I needed to make the perfect 6 little tin candles were in there. So that's the baseline right there. And I actually used that kit as my baseline for practicing candles. I knew that for this size tin, which I think was actually an 8 ounce, it works pretty well with this wick and these fragrances that they sent me. So that's a starter right there. So I knew if I ever wanted to play around with 8 ounce tins in the future, this wick will probably be the go-to wick. They handpicked and put that entire kit together. So 9 times out of 10, you can't really go wrong with what they put, right? So I would just start there. Ask questions via email or telephone. Look, I contact Candle Science to this Candle Science. Candle Science. I contact Candle Science to this day. I just launched about a month ago. I've been playing around with candles for about 2 years. So that says something. I still contact them for questions, especially when I have ideas for different jars and waxes that I was thinking about trying. And hey, if I wanted to switch to this wax but still use this jar, what wick do you recommend? Well, I think you should probably do the CD12 wick, but CD14 could be a runner-up. You just never know. So it's all about trial and error and testing. So contact your local supplier and see what they have. Some other tips and tools that I want to get into really just kind of revolve around the different things that you can use to make your candles. If you haven't gotten to the point where you can, you know, buy these tools, or even you just don't want to invest in some of these tools that you see all the, you know, other big candle makers either on YouTube or on social media use, start small and go from there. Stirring utensil, I brought a couple things up here. So I had this straight-sided spatula just chilling in my house, like legit, and I hadn't used it in years. And so I decided, like, okay, well, this is about to be my stirring tool. And I don't recommend reusing it for food. So whatever you decide to pull from your house to make candles, just keep it. But I had this straight-sided spatula for a while. And so this is actually this is the one that was in my house. It's a lot shorter. And then I ordered this one is from Amazon. So, but this was the one that I had in my house. It's actually kind of beat up a little bit, but I started stirring with this, and I still stir with this, y'all. I make my candles with these, and I just found a second one on Amazon. So I will have it linked below, but this is what I started with. Another option is just get a spoon, kind of those big stirring spoons. Just use a spoon. If it's something that you're not gonna use anymore, use it for your candles. Even a regular spatula will work, to be honest, guys. It's just to make sure your wax and your fragrance gets mixed. So I would just use a spoon. Now, to trim your wick, of course, we all use wick trimmers, you know, as candle makers. And you know, all the professionals use the wick trimmer. Make sure you trim your wick and all this stuff. But when I first got started, I wouldn't think about buying a wick trimmer. Just being honest, I use wire cutters. Just being straight up, I use wire cutters. They was just lying around, and I was looking for something to trim the wick. Scissors aren't that great, and I discovered that. So I was like, I wonder if a wire cutter, if it can cut a wire, it can cut a wick. honey, I use some wire cutters. So if you're starting from the very beginning and you don't want to invest in a wick trimmer, use some wire cutters. This is a great alternative tool. Don't beat me up in the comments or anything, but it's just something to get started, right? I mean, you're making a couple candles at home. And the next thing is a pencil or pen. I don't have one near me, but you're probably like, what for a pencil or pen, what do you need that for? Well, when you are when you're through wicking your jar and you need to get it centered, I used to just wrap the rest of the wick around a pencil or pen as tightly as I could, so that way I can kind of center it in the middle of my jar. So when I went to pour my wax, it was centered and ready to go. So if you don't have any wick bars or, you know, wick holders, a pencil or pen can work, or good old-fashioned clothespins. I know a lot of candle makers that still use clothespins. I have hundreds of them, and I still use clothespins, to be honest with you. So if you're just getting started and you got some old clothespins lying around, this works great too. Depending on the diameter of your jar, these work just as well. I also recommend, for not only beginners but for all of us, is alcohol. This is what I sanitize all my tools with and what I use to clean out my pouring pot when I'm done making my candles or wax melts. So you need alcohol for sure. Now, what to measure your wax in. Now, when I first got started, this was actually in my candle making kit, no lie. Remember I mentioned I just found my candle making kit last week, and this was the hard plastic, huge, I mean, look how big that is, the huge plastic measuring cup that came in my candle making kit, and this is what I measured out my wax in. So if you have a hard, durable plastic that can withstand heat, this is perfect for measuring out your wax. This is something that you can get started with. You'll definitely need, I do recommend some type of scale though. I got this super cheap off Amazon. I really think it was like $7, no lie. And I've had it since I started. It's real beat up and gross with wax all over it. But I've been using this for a couple years and it's been working great. So I do recommend getting a scale, but again, you can find these very inexpensive. This is, you know, to help, you know, measure out the amount of wax and fragrance that you need. A pouring pitcher is another alternative to the plastic pitcher, but you know, these you can find, I think I found my second one off Amazon for maybe $9. So if you don't have either of these, either of these is a pretty inexpensive purchase to start making candles. And another thing you can use are Tupperware, some plastic Tupperware, or some Dixie cups. I got these from Dollar Tree for $1, this whole sleeve. So I just buy a couple of these every once in a while and kind of stock up. When I first started, I was alternating between these and my plastic Tupperware. I don't recommend anything paper because the fragrance oil will eat through it. So just buy a sleeve for $1 of Dixie cups, or just use some old, you know, mini Tupperware if you have that. I just happen to have some when I first started, and use that to measure out your fragrance. Other things that you can use to wick your jars, if you haven't gotten to the point where you want to buy wick stickers, a glue gun. I started out actually using a glue gun. I had a glue gun lying around the house, and that's how I got started. I researched like what else can you use other than wick stickers to adhere your wick to the jar, and glue gun was one of the things that I saw online. So I had one lying around and I'm like, sweet, I'll use this to wick down my wicks to my jars. So those are just some of the tools that I wanted to share. I think that's it for getting started. Again, I wanted to put this out here because I know a lot of people are like, wow, I would love to learn how to make candles, but where do I start? It's just so much and so overwhelming. It's just like, where do I start? So I wanted to make this video for the beginners. If you're thinking about learning to make candles as a hobby, or if you're thinking about, you know, starting a small candle business, but you don't want to invest too much in supplies. Look, some of these supplies, you know why I was able to show y'all? Because I'm still using most of them, honestly. So, you know, start where you can, right? You can only do what you can do. So that was my mindset going in. You cannot compare yourself to candle makers that's been making candles for like 3 to 5 or even more years. And I had to stop myself from doing that and just start where I can start, perfect the craft, and do your research and contact your candle supplier. Join a couple candle making Facebook groups. You got YouTubers out here like me where you can ask questions, and that is all you need, honestly, to get started. That's where I started, honestly, and I believe that's where many of us candle makers started. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, concerns, or recommendations for other video ideas, please leave them in the comment section below. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. And until next time, bye guys.